If there was a better way for you to persuade people to take an action, start or stop acting in a certain way, or simply get someone to see a different point of view, whether it's on your YouTube channel, or for a speech at a public meeting, or for a speech at school, and you're not quite sure how to go about it, I think what you're going to hear today might help you just a little bit. In case we haven't met yet, my name is Stephen Walters, and my goal is to help you reach higher levels of success as you work towards becoming more proficient in mastering your communication skills by persuading you to become more self aware of how you think, how you behave, and how you react in all forms of your communication. I'm also a college instructor who's taught nearly 1,200 students how to develop and deliver well over 2,000 speeches, both in the classroom, face to face, and recorded through a class that I teach. Now, you got to remember this. If my students who were anywhere from 14 years old up through their 50s or so, if they could do it, so can you. This is not that hard to do. Well, once you know how to do it, it's not that hard to do. Now, we're going to talk about persuasion today. So, the purpose of persuasion is to convince an audience or people that your point of view or your opinion on a topic is the best one. Now, there's a lot of different ways to do persuasion. This is mostly in how you develop a persuasive speech. Okay, this is not sales, this is not international negotiations. This is mostly for in the classroom and or people that you know, and it could be for at work too. So when you're thinking about persuasion, don't think of it as sales either. That's another big thing. People think, oh, sales, persuasion, persuasion, sales. Kind of the same thing, but very different in the same way. I did a lot of sales when I was a kid. One of my managers used to said, "Kid, you could sell ice cubes to an Eskimo," and I didn't really understand what that meant until I got some awards, and I was like, "Oh, I get it." That's kind of a strange analogy, but if you can appreciate that, you can. If you can't, well, just let me know, and I'll try to explain it further in another video. All right, so the persuasive speech. One of the biggest things that I promote is you want it to be strong enough and it has to be built good enough. So you're not coercing people, you're not manipulating people, and you're not using too much rhetoric, if any at all. You really shouldn't use rhetoric in a persuasive speech if possible, to build a case in a logical sequence to have your audience keep going more. I want more. I want more. And then the most critical part is you have to actually tell them or ask them to take an action, whether it's to stop doing something or to start doing something. And this is a really important thing. So let's talk about rhetoric first. Rhetoric we hear from politicians, especially now in the US, we're hearing a lot of rhetoric. And rhetoric is designed to have a persuasive or impressive effect on its audience, but it often is regarding or is lacking a sincerity or a meaning to what it really means. Watch any politician and you'll hear rhetoric. I don't care who they are, you will hear rhetoric. It's there. You got to dig further. Now, coercion. This is something that is going on in the world in different places, but coercion is actually forcing people to unwillingly act or behave in a way that they normally wouldn't do by threat or direct pressure or, well, unethical threats, really, immoral threats, if you want. It could be also punishment. A student in my class, what if I don't do this? You're going to fail. Now, it's not me, it's my department. There's certain things I do for my students to help them get through things. But if you don't perform a certain way, I can lay out a threat that's not a threat. It's just the way things are. And that is you're going to fail the course. If you don't show up, you don't do the work. If you don't show up to work and you don't do the presentation for the bosses to help get the money for your department to do the next thing, whatever that thing is, you could get fired. That's not really coercion, that's reality. Now, manipulation is when you lie, to put it straightforward. If you're manipulating somebody in an unethical way to get them to acquiesce, or that just means to give up and go along with your argument in a predetermined way, it kind of isn't really a good thing if you're lying. So avoid the lie. Manipulation can also cause self-doubt in people. And if you're being manipulated and you feel self-doubt, you might want to figure out what's going on and say something. Ask, what do you mean by that? Doesn't hurt to ask. Now, you also have to consider that your credibility, your reputation, and even your possible safety is at risk when you try to coerce, manipulate, or use too much rhetoric in the wrong crowd. Okay, very important. If you're talking to a group of people who are very conservative and you're talking about very liberal things and or vice versa, your safety might become at risk. If you're watching anything online, you'll see a lot of conservative speakers are being booed off campuses by extremists who are activists, and they aren't kind to people. They're very rude, obnoxious, unethical, immoral. They think they're doing the right thing for whatever reason, but it's creating a safety issue. And even for themselves, it's self harm. So we need to be careful of this and be aware of this. Remember, whenever you're trying to persuade somebody, too, this is a big thing. People think, well, I gave them a good story and I gave them all the logic and I gave them the evidence and the proof and all this, and they didn't do anything. Well, the thing is, you might have asked them to take too much of a leap to actually do something that is just too hard to do. If I want you to go run a marathon, like my friend Noah, who is Noah Eats, is running a marathon, he already knows he's got to do it. Now, if he tells me, hey, Steve, go run this marathon with me, I'm going to be like, no. He says, but the benefit is great. There's nothing he can say or do to get me to run that marathon. If I showed up, I might make it half mile, maybe a mile. I could probably walk 5 or 6, maybe 10, but I can't do the full thing. It's just not going to happen. And he could offer me money. It just doesn't matter. I probably couldn't finish, at least without training. Now, if somebody said, hey, if you start training for this, if you start walking 5, 10, 15, 20 miles a day, and then walk faster and faster and faster and build your way up to it, you'll be able to participate maybe in next year's marathon. That could work out. Probably not for me because I'm not into marathons. But again, you get the idea, right? Now, if he says, hey, we're just going to go for a mile run, what do you think? Yeah, I could probably try that. It's probably going to be about the 12 to 14 minute range, but I can try that. Again, it takes time. Think about this. If you know anybody who smokes and you're trying to convince them to stop smoking, you can't just say, hey, you need to stop today. They might want to, but the reality is there's small steps that have to happen in between that. So again, think about the leap that you're asking people to take. If you're trying to change a belief or a value, good luck. It's just not going to happen. You would have to present the most unbelievable story with extreme evidence of why somebody should change their beliefs or values. Those are things that really don't change with people. They just are very difficult to change. People are not born with that they're ingrained with it, which is even stronger than being born with something. Now, let's get back to presentations. There are some topics that you can bring up that you can get people to agree to trying it. Dr. Seuss green eggs and ham is my favorite analogy, right? How do you know you're not going to like it if you don't try it? Well, that's called getting the foot in the door. Okay. In sales, that's an important thing. I don't know if they do that anymore in sales, but back in my day, if we got our foot in the door, that meant we could keep talking to that person to persuade them to keep talking, to maybe sign the contract or buy the product. When you're talking to a classroom or in front of a large group of people, say 100 people, and you're trying to persuade them just to go give you a thumbs up on your video, like I might ask you now. Well, why should you? Well, if you're finding value in this, it'd be worth your time to do. If you feel that way, go ahead and tap that thumbs up. If you're asking people to say, go watch 100 of my videos for every single second, it's not going to happen. If you did it, I'd be totally appreciative. It's going to take you quite a few days to do it, but I don't expect you to do that. And that's asking too much. It's unrealistic. You want to be realistic about what you ask people to do or not do. Okay, so keep this in mind. Now, when it comes to proof and evidence, we want to be careful of that. Proof and evidence has to be believable, has to be realistic. It also needs to be unquestionable in what it is. So if I say, I can hold water up in midair, not very believable. But if I say, I can hold water up in midair in this coffee mug because it is water. And if I tilt it, it'll dump out. But again, it has to be believable. You can't stretch the truth too much or it just doesn't work. One of the first steps you have to do in a presentation is you have to gain your audience's attention. Okay. This is part of Monroe's motivated sequence too. And I'll get into that. There's a video that I link in the description that you can go watch that goes into greater detail. It's more focused. It's not all over the place like I'm going now, but it's more directed. But that first step, I have to gain your attention. If I don't have your attention, nothing's going to happen. The second step is I have to arouse a sense of need that what I'm presenting is something that can solve a problem for you. The third, oh, you can hear the cuckoo. That means it's 9 o'clock. So I want to wrap this up pretty quick. The third step is to also offer a better way or suggest a solution that satisfies, again, your need of what you're doing. And all the pop-ups are happening on my screen at 9 o'clock. The fourth step is to help your audience visualize how the idea you're presenting can help them. If you can't help them imagine or visualize what it is, it's just not going to happen. Nothing's going to happen. Now, I'm going to leave you with this final thought, because this is the most final absolute thing you have to do in order to complete a persuasive argument. It doesn't matter what the argument is, how far you want them to go, or how little you want it to go. And that is called the call to action. The call to action is basically asking or telling someone to go do something or to not do something. Pretty simple. If you don't ask that question or make that statement, everything you just did in that persuasive argument is over. It's done. It's gone. It's not persuasive. It's just informational. So with that, I want to leave you with this thought. If I provided you with enough decent information, at least in the 10 minutes that we did, or 11 minutes, I'm going to go a little over here. I want you to subscribe to my channel if you find value. If not, keep coming back for more, and I'll keep trying to persuade you that what I'm presenting to you can help you master your communication skills. Until we see each other again, I'll see you online soon. Have a great day.